Graham Hancock, in his book America Before, first chapter, describes this amazing scene where he was there with his wife Santha, put a drone in the air, and they took some photos of the summer solstice alignment at Serpent Mound, and I'm going to show you a time lapse I've actually taken of that. I'm also going to talk to you about the symbol of the T in American Enigma, and then really the biggest one we're going to talk about today is what I call the greatest cover-up in archaeology, because it's a proven cover-up. And that's going to deal with the possibility of humans being in the Americas for 250,000 years. It's a site I've been to, so that's a little introduction here. And start off here, we're going to call this the Colorado equinox marker. This is a really interesting petroglyph out kind of where I'm from, and it almost looks like a script. Like it almost looks like it's some type of message. And you can see it's fully illuminated right there, fully framed in picture. And then I took this on the actual spring equinox. This is one of the first things I ever did for my channel. I actually think it was the first video I ever made. And I grew up in a little cow town in southwest Kansas called Syracuse out in western Kansas. So it was pretty cool growing up. I had direct access to some of the coolest stuff you can find in the world, petroglyphs. I go on petroglyphs hunts. That's the first thing I did when I got here Friday. We went and saw some petroglyphs. And so Picture Canyon is in southeast Colorado, and it's probably the most remote place in the United States. There's no people out there. And if you're ever in the area, I doubt you will be, but if you ever are, there are thousands of petroglyphs, pictographs out there in this little canyon out in the high plains. Southeast Colorado in general has some of the most concentrated petroglyphs in all of the Americas. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, whatever, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but unfortunately it's hard to see them because most of it's private land. Picture Canyon isn't, though. That's public land, so if you ever want to go check that out. So on the spring equinox, I woke up at like 3 a.m. to go to Crack Cave, and I normally wouldn't name drop a petroglyph site, but I'm okay doing it here because they actually have a gate that protects this site. You can only get in there a couple times a year. The National Forest Service gives a local a key that does tours if you're ever interested. You can maybe find this online, how you could go see this for yourself. But you can see the ambient sun hasn't quite set, and this is the time lapse that I took of this petroglyph, and it is perfectly illuminated on the day of the spring equinox, also the fall equinox. And these little marks you're seeing here, these are not random. These aren't scribbles, this isn't graffiti. You know, whether they were doing something with counting or it was some type of actual script, you know, it's kind of interesting because supposedly there wasn't script in North America. Here's my little, that's a GoPro right there. GoPro. Yeah, so, and here I am out of Crack Cave. Whoever made this intentionally. That wasn't on accident. Now here's where it gets a little weird. And fun. I shouldn't say weird, I should say fun. It resembles something called Irish Celtic Ogham. And for all the people from England and Ireland out here, y'all would pronounce it Ogham. Out here in America, we say the G, Ogham. And I'm not saying that this was created by Celts at all. I just find it interesting how similar it is. And so I believe it was the Druids. This might go back all the way to the Roman times. It was like a cryptic script that they would use. And you can still see it in Ireland today. A lot of the Catholic churches out there have these monoliths. And theirs was more vertical, but occasionally you see it horizontally here. And really what it is, it's this like solid, consistent line with these different these different notches that are different lengths apart. And believe it or not, there's a translation that you can have for Celtic Ogham. There's actually a couple guys, William McGlone and Philip Leonard. I think William McGlone has passed away. They actually tried to give a translation for this right here. They thought it said the sun strikes here on the day of Baal. I don't know if that's true or not. In my opinion, it's far-fetched to say that. I do believe that there was cross-Atlantic voyages. coming to the Americas, but I don't necessarily think that Celts were running around southeast Colorado. I think these were carved by Native Americans in the region from the high plains. I just think it's really interesting how similar that writing structure was. And this isn't the only place in the Americas that you can find this. I've seen this, I'll call it writing. I don't know if it's writing, but I've seen these petroglyphs all over North and South America. Here's another equinox marker time lapse that I took in the panhandle of Oklahoma. And this one, it definitely looks like Celtic Ogham. Whether it is or not, I don't know, but 100% an equinox marker in my opinion. It goes right through the center of that petroglyph. Maybe that makes it a calendar on the day of the spring equinox. Pretty cool. That's on private land out there, a little place called Anubis Caves. It's got a lot of lore behind it that I'm not necessarily going to get into today, but if you want to check that out, Anubis Caves, one of the first videos I've ever made on my channel. Out in West Virginia, it's hard to see here because unfortunately somebody has chalked this petroglyph, so it makes the contrast a little difficult, but once again, more interesting markings here. Supposedly there's a winter solstice alignment here, but they even have a little sign that talks about how similar it is to the Celts. This is out in Wyoming County, West Virginia. Nearby are ancient rock carvings of unknown purposes. Sorry, I got to look a little closer here. Some think early Celtic explorers carved them. Others believe Native Americans more likely carved them prior to 1000 AD. Really interesting, though. So I've also seen these out in Paraguay in South America, and you can see these like in Egypt. It's not just, these types of markings aren't just unique to Ireland. So I don't know what's going on there. Really interesting. All right, if I can get your permission, I'm going to get really weird with this one. So let's do it. So this is still doing archaeoastronomy here. This is out in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, Chimney Rock, Colorado, if you've ever heard of that. And that is a photo from the National Park Service in 2007 of a full moon rising through the pillars at Chimney Rock, Colorado. And I titled this, "The Moon and the Stars Control the Economy." And this is actually literally the title of the chapter of my book, chapter 17, I believe. And this is one of the first things I did when I went exploring. I think it was COVID. I was living out in Denver with my brother. I was walking in a park by myself, 200 yards away from anybody, and some freak comes up to me yelling that I needed to have a mask on. And I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to go to the desert. So I took Trump's stimmy check and bought a drone and went out to Chimney Rock, Colorado, east of Durango, right over by Pagosa Springs. It's a really arid place in the San Juan Mountains. And took some cool drone shots here. This is a hyperlapse I took. And I'll just kind of set the vibe, set the scene here before I tell you what's going on here. This is a Chacoan-style great house. I say Chacoan because it's built in the style of Chaco Canyon. And it's quite a bit of an outlier. It's to the northeast. It's in Colorado. It's in a place that there wasn't really any agriculture, not a lot of water. So what are they doing up there? What were the Chacoans, what were the ancestral Puebloans doing up there? Why was it so important? Here's a little AI recreation of what I believe the path would have been. That took me a minute to make. But yeah, I'll kind of let this finish up, and then I'm going to tell you why they were probably building that up there. So, there's a really good archaeologist named Dr. J. McKim Malville that figured this out. They did tree ring analysis, and I'm going to just read from the second slide right here, that showed two major building phases in 1076 and 1094 AD, matching the 18.6-year lunar standstill cycle. So a major lunar standstill is a phase of the moon which shows it rising and setting at extreme points on the horizon, which is different than how it is the prior, 15 years, right? It's a lot more consistent. And it creates a dramatic visual effect. So in 1987, archaeoastronomy was still kind of I don't want to say it was like a forbidden thing in archaeology, but it was kind of a little bit out there. And Dr. J. McKim Malville correctly predicted that during this event, the moon would rise exactly between the two pillars when viewed from the Great House. And this suggests the site functioned as a precise astronomical calendar, likely tied to agricultural or long-term environmental cycles. And so, this isn't the only place you can find this. All the ancient sites in the world were pretty in tune with that 18.6-year cycle. And so this gets into a little bit of an astrology. I'm not an astrologist. I don't live my life by, astrology. But I think there's probably something to it, right? We know that the moon has this dramatic effect on the tides in the ocean. Our bodies are made up of 75% water. There's probably things celestially with gravity that affect human behavior, especially on the masses. And when that's happening, it's going to affect the economy, all kinds of different things. So they were super in tune with this. And what's interesting about that is we kind of still are. This guy's name is W.D. Gann, and he's got a bit of a cult following. He's been dead for a century. And he was basically a financial astrologer. And he would use that 18.6-year cycle to predict boom and bust cycles in the stock market. Ray Dalio today is one of the best hedge fund managers in the world, a guy that I pay attention to. He's pretty sharp, whether you agree with his politics or not. And I believe he calls it his 18-year business cycle, kind of the credit bust boom cycle. Well, that's interesting because W.D. Gann successfully predicted the Great Depression and the big stock market boom there. He used this cycle to extrapolate out. And if you look at it, the 1970s inflation, and I think the 80s, early 90s, can't remember the exact time, but the Asian financial crisis. And then you all saw that first, what was the date of that first photo I showed you? Does anybody remember? 2007. What happened in 2007? Yeah, the big crash. So really interesting. And if you've done a little math in your head, you'll know that the lunar standstill just started again in 2023. And we're going to be in it until sometime in 2026.